beautiful Silver Spring State Park. You folks are now currently aboard one of our world-famous glass-bottom boat tours. Now, my name is Captain Bridger, and I'll be your captain and guide for the next 30 minutes or so. And before we get too far away from the dock, I am required to tell you guys that I am licensed and certified by the U.S. Coast Guard to be your captain today. So with that, there are a few safety spills that we got to go over first. First and foremost, I do have a radio here beside me that's in contact with the other boat and the dock back here. And if for some reason any of you folks were to become ill or impaired, then just let me know and I'll have EMTs on the dock within about 15 minutes for you. Now, if for some reason I were to become ill or impaired and I'm not able to finish the tour, well then just grab this radio right here, push and hold the button to the left-hand side, and then give them the international distress signal. Ow! Just let them know that you're aboard the Chief Neamathala today, and tell them that Captain Bridger is down and out for the count, and help will be with you all shortly. Also, we do have life jackets conveniently located right above your heads here. The adult jackets are there in the middle, and the child jackets are to the front and the back of the boat. Now, don't worry, in over 100 years we've never needed to use a life jacket, so we should be just fine for today. But if for some reason something were to happen, I'll ask you to bring them down from the top, place them over your head, secure them around your waist, and make your way out into the water. And then, folks, an alligator rescue team will be here shortly to save you all. And it will only cost you an arm and a leg for the service. One last thing before we start looking at some springs, folks. These 3 panes of glass you're looking through right now are just half an inch thick, and these are not magnified at all. In fact, these right here are just regular old panes of glass from 1972. And now, folks, with all of that being said, this first spring we will look at today is the Spring of Stars. Now, as some of you folks probably already know, many movies and TV shows have been filmed here at Silver Springs all throughout the years. The very first one was way back around 1916. That was a silent black and white film called The Seven Swans. Since then, world-renowned actors and actresses like Jane Russell, Burt Reynolds, Jerry Lewis, Lloyd Bridges, Tom Cruise, Johnny Weissmuller, Steve Irwin, and many, many more have all done movies and TV shows right here at Silver Springs. And in some cases at this very spring we are at right now. At its deepest point right here, this spring will reach about 26 feet in depth. Well, while we're on the topic of movies, folks, by a quick show of hands, how many on board has seen the classic horror movie, The Creature from the Black Lagoon? Looks like it's just as good. This next spring we're looking at today will be called the Creature Spring. Now, this is called the Creature Spring because this is the site of where we get our very first appearance of that creature underneath the water in the iconic film. Creature from the Black Lagoon was released in 1954, starring Richard Carlson and Julie Adams, and to this day it is still considered a horror movie classic of all time. And all underwater shots of that movie were filmed right here at Silver Springs. Now, the most unsung hero of this entire movie is the guy that plays the creature. Because this particular gentleman was a local man who was a professional diver and a swimmer, and he had to put on a very awkward wetsuit that was the creature costume. And since that wetsuit of his had no air tanks, he had to hold his breath for up to a few minutes at a time while filming his underwater scenes here. And to make that more impressive than it already is, the depth of this spring is anywhere from around 30 to 32 feet deep, right down here. Now, for those of you on board who have not seen Creature from the Black Lagoon, the Walmart right across the street from the park normally has it on DVD for like $5. But this next spring we're approaching, folks, is going to be called the Abyss. Now, years ago, we had some divers come out here to measure just how deep this next spring goes. So they grabbed their scuba diving gear and they went down below into the abyss. Now, as these divers got deeper, they learned real quick that this became a lot tighter as they went down. Well, they got so tight, in fact, that they had to take off their air tanks and push them in front of them to wedge themselves deeper into this spring. Well, these brave souls ended up getting deeper and deeper. And eventually, they were stopped by this spring at about 81 feet down below. Crazy. But while they were down there, they noticed that there was still just a little bit of wiggle room left over below them. So they grabbed some weighted line and they dropped over a 1/4 mile of rope deeper into this spring. And it never hit the bottom.
Wow.
So, we really have no idea how deep this spring actually is. But for the record books, this is listed as at least a 1/4 mile deep. But to give you guys an idea on how deep we think this spring is, one day we did find a sign floating from below down here. And that sign was red and yellow, and it was written in Chinese. Pretty deep hole, huh? This spring we are entering now is the Florida snowstorm. Now this area down below us will be one of the only places in Florida where it snows. And this is one of 2 places in the entire world where it can snow flowing up. Obviously, I'm not actually talking about snow here. But what I am talking about are just bits of rocks, shells, and limestone all being pushed out by the force of the spring, giving the general appearance of snow. But you'll hear me mention limestone a couple times throughout the trip today. And that's because the Florida aquifer, where all these springs are coming from, is pretty much made entirely of limestone. Now, if you don't know what the aquifer is, kind of think of an underground lake and river system. It spreads throughout nearly the entire state of Florida, and it even creeps into southern Georgia. Now, there are certain points in the aquifer where all the force from this water will erode away at the limestone, cracking onto the surface of the earth, creating these spring heads, like the ones we're looking at here today. And that in turn will help create some of the lakes and rivers, like the Silver River that we're currently on as we speak. As we're passing the cluster of trees here on the right, you may find some of our larger black birds hanging out in the branches here. You'll also find some of them in and around the water, because these are going to be both anhingas and cormorants. Both of those are some of our swimming birds that we have out here on the river. Now, those birds will swim around and look for something to eat in the form of small fish, like some of the brim that we get out here. And these birds out here are excellent swimmers and even better fishermen, but they do lack a natural oil in their body to repel water. So when they're swimming around, all that water is just going to soak into their body like a sponge. So there's a point where they are just too heavy to hold themselves underneath the water. And when that happens, you can find them hanging out on tree branches in the area, and you'll find them spreading their wings out to dry off manually. We're looking at here is going to be the spring of life. Now, right underneath the glass here, folks, we're going to be able to find a very suspicious piece of wood down here along the bottom of the river. Now, this piece of wood right here has garnered so much attention that the University of Florida from up in Gainesville came down here to look at this thing for us. Now, they wanted a closer look at it, though, so they ended up taking it out of the water and out to Gainesville to do their research, and they concluded that this right here was an old Native American dugout canoe. This right here is believed to be used by some of the Timucua Native Americans that were in this area hundreds of years ago. In fact, they found out through their carbon dating that this dugout canoe is over 600 years old, making it the oldest dugout canoe found in Florida. Now, UF was wanting to put this into the Florida Museum of Natural History, but the state park was wanting them to come put it right back here where they found it, since this is considered state property. So UF really had no choice but to agree to do so, and they were able to come put this back within just a few inches of where they once found it, and that's to help preserve how it was naturally here at one point. So this canoe right here will sit right where it's at for as long as it can. And luckily for this canoe, it is able to sit here for clearly quite a long time, because this is going to be made out of cypress wood. And as long as that cypress wood was taken out of the trunk of the tree, there is a natural chemical in that wood that helps keep it perfectly preserved. Coming right below us now is the Blue Grotto. Now here throughout the Silver River, we have over 32 different species of fish. And this is including, but not limited to, 7 different kinds of bass, 2 different types of gar, we have catfish, an armored catfish, and several different types of bream. Out here we also have mullet, bowfin, whitefish, shad, river trout, and we even have tilapia in this river. And tilapia is an invasive species originally from Asia. Now, we're not quite sure how the tilapia ended up here in Central Florida, but if you ask me, I'm thinking that they may have taken a shortcut through the abyss. That was funny the second time. But throughout our trip today, you folks are probably wondering, how does the Silver River here get its color? Well, the Native Americans that were here hundreds of years ago learned that the limestone, all the white stuff down here at the bottom of the river, when that all gets met by the sunlight, that light is going to reflect off of the rock underneath the water, and that is what helps give this river its silvery blue tones. And it was with the knowledge that the Native Americans so originally named this place. Now, as we're getting ready to make the turn and head back upriver, if you folks start to look over to the right-hand side through the trees out there, you may start to see a large white building out in the distance. Now, I know it may be kind of tough to see out there through the trees, but that's going to be a huge estate with beautiful colonial-style architecture sitting on a massive piece of property out there. And that, folks, is my brand new house. Perks of the job. All of them. I'm just joking. That up there is not my brand new house, folks. That is just the Twin Oaks Mansion. But the Twin Oaks Mansion isn't even a real mansion. No, that out there is just a stage and our old concert venue here at Silver Springs. Now, that was built around 1993 in hopes of bringing in some world-famous acts to perform here at Silver Springs. And it has certainly done its job. Because we've had the likes of Willie Nelson play here a few times. Charlie Daniels has played here a couple times as well. Loretta Lynn, Casey and the Sunshine Band, The Temptations, The Beach Boys, Foreigner, America, Loverboy, Molly Hatchet, Cheap Trick, Styx, Johnny Cash, Metallica, Tribute Band. So essentially, you name it, at some point they have probably played here at Silver Springs. But unfortunately, though, these days, the mansion is not being used so much as a concert venue. Main reason being, it is very tough to make money from a concert when you're only allowed to charge $2 per ticket. But if we have any potential newlyweds on board, or anyone looking to maybe renew some vows, the Twin Oaks Mansion can be booked out as a wedding venue these days, too. And yes, folks, with enough people, you can average that out to about $2 per person. Now, we are going to be rounding the seawall here in just a moment. And as we do so, over on the right-hand side, passing these taller trees and bushes, we will start to see a large statue of Osceola, of the Seminole Native American tribe. And about our 2 o'clock up here. Now, the story behind the statue up here depicts of when Osceola refused to sign a treaty with the U.S. government. See, at this point during the early 1800s, the U.S. was pushing a lot of natives away from this area. And their treaty basically said that as long as the Seminoles don't put up a fight, the Americans will let them leave the area with their lives. So, Osceola did not take too kindly to that message. So he took their treaty and he placed it on top of a table. He took out his very large knife and he drove it right through. Now, these actions are, of course, what sparked a war between the U.S. and the Seminoles. And those actions took place right here in this general area of Ocala. Now, even though a lot of these Seminoles did end up getting pushed all throughout the country, a good number of them fought, and they remain here in Florida still to this day. They never left, and more importantly, they never signed. So, the Seminoles are truly unconquered. Except when it comes to football. Alrighty, folks, we are now approaching the main event of our tour today. Now, coming under the glass in just a second, we will be able to find Mammoth Spring. Now, Mammoth Spring is going to be the head spring of the Silver River. The spring itself is a cave that's about 5 feet tall and about 65 feet wide. So because of its large size, right now you four on my left are getting the best look at the spring right now. But I will spin the bow to make sure everyone can get a good look at this down here. Now, this big spring by itself is responsible for pushing out over 550 million gallons of water every single day. That big old number is what makes this spring right here the largest artesian spring made out of limestone in the entire world. The water that comes out of the Florida aquifer will maintain a constant temperature of 72 degrees year-round. And right out of the spring, this water is 99.8% pure fresh water. Now, this all will form the Silver River here, which flows for about 5.5 miles until it eventually flows into the Osceola River. And once it's in the Osceola, it'll snake its way across the state flowing east. And it'll cut through the Rodman Dam and a few lakes along the way. And eventually it will hit the St. Johns River out in Palatka. And then from there, the St. Johns River will take this water to north, through Jacksonville, and out into the Atlantic Ocean. And at its very deepest point in front of us, this spring will reach a total of about 45 feet deep. But as we float across here, folks, there is still just one final thing I've got to show you before we make our way back. Now, around 1967, there was a TV show by the name of I Spy, starring Robert Culp and Bill Cosby. And around midway through the 3rd season, there was an episode that required an underwater scene with some underwater statues. And these statues are what we're going to be cruising on top of right about now. Now, these 3 statues below us are the Greek gods, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades. Right now, these sit in almost 30 feet of water. They each stand roughly 7 feet tall, and these are made almost entirely out of a mythical substance called fiberglass. Originally, for I Spy, there were 12 of these statues in total. And when filming was done, they were going to bring all 12 out of the water. But some of the local people here in Silver Springs put up such a stink that they compromised. So they only took out 9 and left 3 below for our viewing pleasure. How nice. After I Spy, you can find these guys in the James Bond movie Moonraker. And aside from Moonraker and I Spy, these statues right here in the area all around us can be seen in tons of other different movies, TV shows, and commercials all throughout the years. So for the last 54 years, these three statues below us have grown to be some of our resident movie stars. Move over John Travolta. Now, was everybody able to see the statues? Did everybody get the pictures that they wanted? Now, before we begin our closing ceremonies, folks, we were unfortunately not able to see an alligator on our trip today. I do apologize. They're probably late clocking in this morning. But a good captain will always come strapped with a plan B. So, just for you folks, I do still have some sort of an alligator to show you. Just right here instead. I can make a mix. Well, folks, with all of that being said, that is going to conclude our glass bottom boat tour this morning. Now, I do want to thank y'all for coming and hanging out with me this morning. I hope you all had a good time out there on the water today. As we're pulling into the dock, just make sure that you grab all of your personal belongings like your cameras, phones, purses, wallets, etc. If you folks happen to leave anything behind, though, you can check Craigslist tomorrow morning. As we're pulling in, just remain seated for me until we get the boat against the dock, then we'll give you an all clear to go ashore. And folks, it has been tradition for over 150 years or so to place any gratuities along the glass bottom of the boat. And if you choose to continue the tradition today and leave a tip on the glass, I do very much appreciate it. Thank you folks for that. But again, as we're pulling in, just hang tight for me. We are going to feel a small bump or two as we pull in. And I will make these bumps here as minuscule as possible for you. Small bump right about there. Give us just a moment to get these lines tied off and the gateway dropped, and we will be all good to go ashore. And folks, on behalf of Silver Spring State Park, again, my name is Captain Bridger, and thank you guys again for coming.
Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe to keep these videos coming. You can also follow me on Facebook. The link is in the description below.